Welcome to installing Linux software on an Alces Flight Compute cluster. Before we get started, you'll need to have an Alces Flight Compute cluster launched on AWS, and you'll need to have SSH access to that environment. Your Alces Flight Compute cluster comes pre-installed with a version of the CentOS operating system. You can look at the current release version by reading the etc Red Hat release entry. Both the login node and all the compute nodes on your cluster are installed with the same version of Linux. Users can install their own software packages on their compute cluster using the Yum tool. Yum is useful for installing software packages from the Linux distribution directly onto your login and compute nodes. You can use the command yum list to view all the available packages for Linux. If you want to search for a particular package, use the yum search command with the search term that you want to use. So if I want an application for taking notes on Linux, I can use yum search note. Yum will tell me what different applications to do with notes are available. To install a particular application, I need to use the sudo command to be root. Use sudo, then yum install, and then the package name that you want to install. Yum will automatically download the installer for the package. It will check to see if there are any prerequisites or dependencies for the application, and then it will install the application here on the login node of the cluster. By default, Yum will prompt for confirmation to make sure that you're ready to go ahead and install the package and any dependencies. Once the application is installed, it's available for use on your login node. To search for different packages, just use search terms that will find what you're looking for. Yum search database will show me all the different database types that are available. If I want a particular database, for example, the MariaDB for MySQL, I can search specifically for that product. Installing without being prompted for confirmation is done using the -y command. So for example, this command will install both the MariaDB and its development libraries on the login node. Sometimes you may want to install packages on both the login and your compute nodes of the cluster. You can do this using the PDSH tool. For example, if I want to install the zlib libraries, I can use the command yum install zlib on a login node. To do that across the whole cluster, I can use the command pdsh-g sudo to become root, yum install -y so I'm not prompted for confirmation, and then the name of the library I want to install, zlib-devel. Pressing return will run the sudo yum install command across the login node and all compute nodes in my cluster. The output on the display is prefixed by the host name of each of the nodes running the command. Each node will automatically download packages and install them on their Linux distribution. Installing lots of packages across a large cluster can take some time, so allow this to complete before you continue. Sometimes a package you want to install isn't available in the standard repositories. Users can also enable the extra packages for Enterprise Linux environment to get access to more applications. For example, I might want to use the kdevelop IDE, which is a development environment specifically for the KDE desktop. That isn't packaged in the standard CentOS repository, so I can enable the EPEL set of repositories as well on my cluster. To enable EPEL across all machines in my cluster, I can use the command pdsh-g cluster sudo yum install -y the EPEL release package. That will download the EPEL release and automatically install it on all nodes in the cluster. Once EPEL is enabled for the cluster, you can use the command sudo yum install kdevelop. That will use the EPEL repository to pull in the kdevelop package and any requirements for it and install it on the cluster. Again, the time taken to install large packages and many dependencies will depend on the speed and the size of the instances that you've built your cluster upon. Once the application is installed, you can connect to your cluster using a graphical desktop and use it as you would any other Linux system. Remember, if you're going to be running applications across compute nodes, to make sure that you've installed the packages on both your login and your compute node instances for your environment. Users can also install applications using a graphical desktop environment. To do that, start a new graphical desktop session. Use the command alces session start gnome to start a GNOME graphical desktop. When the connection information appears, enter the IP address and port number into your VNC client. Connect using the password provided. From the graphical desktop, you can run the application installer. This allows you to select applications to install across the cluster. For example, to install the Firefox browser, enter Firefox into the search bar, click on the Install button. You need to set a cluster user password in order to use the graphical installer. On your cluster, use the command sudo passwd and then the account name that you created when you launched the cluster. Here I've used Alces. Enter a new password for your user. Make it a secure password as long as possible with numbers and capital letters. Enter that password into the application installer to begin the installation process. Again, this can take a few seconds or it can take a bit longer depending on the size of the application and the type of instance that you're running. Once a new application is installed, it will appear in the application menu. While using yum to install RPMs is convenient for system packages, yum is not designed to manage software applications that have complex dependencies, span multiple nodes, or need to coexist with other incompatible applications. Watch our video on Alces Gridware for more information on installing scientific applications across your cluster and managing these dependencies. That concludes this video. Please watch the other videos in the series for more information about using your cluster and running applications through the job scheduler. To find documentation online, just go to our website, alces-flight.com, click on the documentation link. That will give you all the printed documentation for using the system.